There is nothing more terrifying than a place that has been abandoned, not only because the silence is eerie in itself, but also because of the implicit horror. Why was this place abandoned? What happened? And where did the people go? It's chilling, to say the least. These are the 11 scariest abandoned places in the world. Number 1, Craco, Italy. As mentioned in the introduction, there are countless reasons why people stay away from certain abandoned places. In the context of Craco, Italy, this is due to public safety, as the once proud city is no longer what it used to be. Craco was initially settled by the Greeks in the 6th century BC, although the tombs dated from the 8th century BC. They suggest an older incarnation, which is not surprising, given the gaps in the records and how various civilizations build on each other. Like many places around the world, the city of Craco grew and shrank over the decades, receiving new buildings, improvements, and new people. It was also active during key parts of European history, such as the Exodus to the west. However, what left it in decline were natural disasters. A series of earthquakes and landslides slowly condemned the place to becoming uninhabitable. In 1980, the entire city was abandoned and now only a ruin remains standing. That doesn't mean you can't visit it, because you can, you just need to be careful as the place is falling apart due to exposure to nature for about 40 years. Still, thanks to its stunning appearance and its new form, you'll occasionally see the city being used for movies, one of which was The Passion of the Christ. Therefore, even in its abandonment, Craco continues to receive some fame. Number 2, Hotel del Salto. The next spot was a case of bad timing, bad location, and just plain bad luck. The Hotel del Salto was built near the Bogota River in Colombia, and was intended to be one of the most exotic hotels in the region. For a time, it achieved that goal, as it was a nice place to visit, as long as you didn't see any spirits. Yes, there were supposedly ghosts that roamed the grounds because the nearby waterfall was a place the natives used to flee from the conquistadors. Additionally, the river itself eventually became polluted, making people want to move away from it even further. Fast forward to today, the hotel is still a museum, but it is one that you should still be very careful about if you visit. Number 3, Poveglia Island. As I will show throughout this list, sometimes the real-life history of a place can be much more terrifying and horrifying than any supernatural story you can make up. And if you don't believe me, just take a look at a still isolated place in Italy called Poveglia Island. This island had its first brush with infamy during the Black Death. Those who were infected with the disease were taken to the island to be quarantined, and the entire place was then isolated as a prohibited zone. This basically meant that if you were sent to the island, you were being sent there to die, and sure enough, they died. The bodies were buried en masse on the island to make way for other victims who arrived. Then, as if the place couldn't get even more haunted, a mental hospital was placed on the island and bad things started happening there. Furthermore, another building was built on the island and more strange incidents occurred. Sometimes people just don't get the hint, right? Regardless, the island was eventually abandoned, and despite plans to put things there to replace the old ones, that never happened. Number 4, Island of the Dolls. The history of the island is as famous as the island itself. The caretaker of the place once found the body of a drowned girl in nearby waters and felt that he was being haunted by her spirit, which remained there. So he found some dolls, mainly her heads, and hung them all over the place so she would have something to play with and leave him alone. Years later, the caretaker died in exactly the same place where he found the girl's body. That's pretty scary, isn't it? To make matters worse, people now believe that there are multiple spirits visiting the island. Visitors claim that the dolls' heads move and that their eyes are always watching. Dolls can be scary in the right context, but this one just takes the prize for being terrifying. Number 5. Dome houses in Florida. Before 2022, you may have noticed certain dome houses off the coast of Florida, near Cape Romano Island. Maybe you've even wondered how they got there. The answer is that a retired oil industry man named Bob spent many years coming up with a unique housing project that would be a kind of vacation home for him. Clearly, he didn't want to build a simple mansion, he wanted something unique and only his. He built a model of the dome houses on his property in Tennessee and began building them on stilts in the waters off the coast of Florida. The house was designed to be self-sufficient through solar energy. Once completed, Bob lived in the house occasionally, and when storms came, the dome houses were designed to keep him safe. However, it wasn't meant to last, and he and his family had to leave because they simply couldn't live there anymore. That's where the last twist comes in. Remember how I said you could see the houses before 2022? Well, that's because Hurricane Ian came through and submerged them, which anyone with common sense would have noticed before they were even built. Number 6. Villa Epecuen. As has been mentioned several times, the desire to attract tourism to an area leads people to build great things, like this villa in Argentina. Villa Epecuen was a place that could be reached from Buenos Aires, and when it was in operation it could accommodate 5,000 people, neither too crowded nor too desolate. So what happened? Well, the dam broke, causing the waters around the village to rise, forcing the people to leave. Although the disaster was eventually resolved, the site was never rebuilt. And while you can still visit today, you'll clearly see the natural damage caused by the dam breaking. Number 7. The Ukrainian city of Pripyat, now a ghost town, is home to the worst nuclear disaster of all time. On April 25, 1986, a reactor at the nuclear power plant exploded, releasing radioactive materials into the area. The government attempted to evacuate as many people as possible living near the city of Pripyat. A total of 335,000 people had to leave their homes, and a restricted zone 30 kilometers wide was formed where they could not go. In the following drone video, we can see what Pripyat looked like decades later. There is a creepy atmosphere around the abandoned buildings, the hospital, the school, but most of all, the playgrounds with the abandoned toys. Number 8. If you walked through Craco, Virginia, in the US, and came across the next area of large statues, you would think you had landed on another planet. These total of 43 statues are the former presidents of the USA. Each statue is 5 to 6 meters tall. As you can see, they are not in the best condition. The statues of Abraham Lincoln and his predecessors look like something out of a horror movie, with broken heads and shredded body parts. They are the remains of Virginia's President's Park. When the park closed, sculptor David Addy Kurz, who had created the disturbing statues, saw his work almost lost. The giant statues were eventually brought to a 400-acre farm. Number 9. Church revived by ghosts. In the small town of Lakova, in the Czech Republic, stands a church that holds a chilling secret. This is the Church of San Jorge, a 14th-century construction that witnessed the faith and history of its inhabitants. But in 1968, everything changed during a funeral. The roof of the church collapsed, causing panic among those attending. The locals interpreted the event as a sign of a curse and abandoned the temple forever. The church was exposed to the passage of time and to the looting of the communists, who took away its paintings, statues, and other valuable objects. However, in 2014, a young art student brought him back to life. Looking for a place for his final year project, he came across the ruined church and saw an opportunity in it. With the permission of the temple manager, he created several plaster sculptures covered with white cloth, which he placed on the benches as if they were worshippers praying. The ghostly figures made a great impression on those who saw them from the outside, and soon the church became a global tourist attraction. The students' work was intended to pay tribute to the Germans who had prayed there before being expelled after World War II, but it also managed to spark interest in the history and restoration of the church. Number 10. Abandoned doll village in Japan. There are many remote and lonely places, but none as chilling as Nagaro. This town located on the island of Shikoku looks like something out of a horror movie. Its inhabitants are not people, but straw dolls, about 350 in total. They were all made by a woman who returned to the town after many years and found that almost all of them were gone or dead. To fill the void, she began creating dolls representing former neighbors and placing them in the places where they used to be. Nowadays, dolls seem to have a life of their own. Some are sitting in homes, others in school classrooms, and others in different corners of the town. Touring Nagaro is a unique experience, as long as you are not afraid of dolls. Number 11. The Last House on Holland Island. This house was the last one left standing on Holland Island, an island that disappeared underwater. This Victorian home was built in 1888 on Holland Island in the Chesapeake Bay. The island was named after its first owner, Daniel Holland, a British colonialist. It was not inhabited by anyone until the late 1850s, when it became a thriving community of fishermen and farmers. Many people saw the potential of the island, and in the early 20th century, Holland Island became one of the most populated islands in the region. No one living on the island suspected that their home would soon be engulfed by the rising sea. At that time, it was a prosperous community and no one thought they would have to abandon their homes. It wasn't until 1914 that some people noticed the water rising slowly and the shoreline eroding so quickly. As they arrived, the fishermen decided to move to the mainland, but some people tried to save the island. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. In the end, almost everyone left, but in 1955, the island was purchased by Mr. Stephen White, a church minister who thought he could save the island, or at least what was left of it. He tried everything he could to stop the advance of the water, but the island's fate was sealed. By 2010, this Victorian house finally collapsed and succumbed to weathering and erosion. Although there is nothing left of Holland Island to explore today, its history will never be forgotten.